He leaned against my desk, a smirk playing on his lips. Emma, what can a good boss do to make his favorite employee happy? The exhaustion and frustration got the better of me. Unless you'd like to pretend to be my boyfriend at my best friend's and my ex's wedding, there's nothing you can do. Right? I'll do you one better. I'll pretend to be your fiancé. I blinked. Wait, what? The wedding invitation. Thick, cream-colored, calligraphy screaming, expensive. Addressed to me. Seriously, universe, this is how you're choosing to mess with me today? I opened it, bracing myself for the usual, a distant relative's nuptials, a charity gala I couldn't afford. Nope, this was worse. Jason and Chloe, the card proclaimed. The names intertwined in an elaborate monogram that made my stomach churn. Jason, my ex, the one who dumped me for Chloe, my ex-best friend, the one who'd promised maid of honor, then delivered boyfriend thief. And the kicker? I wasn't just invited, I was a bridesmaid. A bridesmaid. At their wedding. Smiling politely, wearing some hideous dress, watching them pledge undying love. Universe, your sense of humor is truly twisted. The news spread through the office like wildfire. Brenda, my coworker, approached, her voice dripping with pity and morbid curiosity. Emma, honey, I heard about the wedding. Are you okay? Okay, was I okay? I was breathing mostly. Functioning human being, debatable. Oh, it's fine, I lied, my smile as fake as the spray tan I'd considered getting, then decided against, because really, why bother? I'm happy for them. Really? Internally, I was dying. Every whispered conversation, every sympathetic glance, every question about my non-existent date was a fresh stab wound. I tried the usual coping mechanisms, wine, ice cream, the whole Bridget Jones shebang. Didn't work. Jason and Chloe at the altar haunted my every thought. And then there was the dress, the bridesmaid dress, guaranteed to be some hideous shade of something unflattering. Maybe I can fake a sudden illness, I muttered to myself, staring at the invitation. Or disappear, new name, remote island, the works. Oh, but I knew I couldn't. Running, hiding, letting them win? Not an option. I had to face them, show them I was fine, thriving even if it killed me. It was a Friday afternoon, the kind where everyone's mentally checked out, dreaming of happy hour and freedom. Except me. I was drowning in spreadsheets, my brain fried, my patience thinner than my last paycheck. Nicholas, my boss, the ridiculously handsome, impossibly successful CEO of Hawthorne Enterprises, strolled by, his usual aura of power and confidence radiating off him like expensive cologne. He leaned against my desk, a smirk playing on his lips. Emma, what can a good boss do to make his favorite employee happy? I knew it was a rhetorical question, a bit of Friday afternoon banter. Still, the exhaustion and frustration got the better of me. Unless you'd like to pretend to be my boyfriend at my ex's wedding, there's nothing you can do. I expected a chuckle, a polite dismissal, the usual, that's a good one, Emma. Instead, his smirk widened. I'll do you one better. I'll pretend to be your fiancé. I blinked. Wait, what? You heard me, he said, his eyes gleaming with a mix of amusement, and was that a challenge? Fake engagement, the whole 9 yards. We'll make Jason and Chloe wish they'd never sent that invitation. My initial disbelief morphed into something else. Intrigue, excitement, a flicker of mischief. This was crazy, ridiculous, utterly out of character, but it was also kind of brilliant. You're serious? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Never been more serious, he replied, his gaze unwavering. So, what do you say, Emma? Want to play a game? The dread that had been weighing me down, the humiliation, the frustration, it all started to dissipate, replaced by a surge of something new, hope, defiance, a chance to rewrite the narrative, to turn the tables, to maybe have a little fun at Jason and Chloe's expense. Okay, I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. Let's play. And just like that, the game began. The fake engagement was officially in motion, and let's just say it was proving to be an experience. First came the shopping. Nicholas, ever the perfectionist, insisted on the works. New dress for me, obviously. Something that screamed, successful fiancé for him, the whole 9 yards, which, considering his bank account, probably meant several nines of yards. We hit the high-end boutiques, the kind of places where the sales assistants look at you like you've just crawled out from under a rock if you don't recognize the designer's name. I felt a little out of my depth, surrounded by silk and cashmere and price tags that could pay my rent for a year. Nicholas, however, was in his element. He had an eye for detail, a sense of style that it was impressive, and a little intimidating. "This one," he'd say, holding up a dress that shimmered like liquid gold, "will make Jason's jaw drop." "Iken said, or give him a heart attack from the price tag," I muttered under my breath. He chuckled. "Details, Emma, details. We're creating a persona, a power couple and power couples." He paused, giving me a pointed look. "Dress the part." The dress was, admittedly, stunning, and as I tried it on, twirling in front of the mirror, I had to admit I looked good, really good, almost confident. Next came the backstory. Nicholas was meticulous. Where we met, how we fell in love, our plans for the future. It was all fabricated, of course, but he wanted it to be believable. "Okay," he said, leaning back in his chair, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "Let's say we met at a charity gala. You were volunteering, I was being charming, obviously." "Obviously," I echoed dryly. We spent the next hour crafting our fake relationship, complete with inside jokes, pet names, which I vetoed immediately, and a timeline that conveniently glossed over the fact that just a few weeks ago, I was the pathetic, dateless bridesmaid-to-be. And then the PDA, the awkward, amusing, utterly necessary PDA practice. Nicholas insisted, "We have to be convincing Emma, subtle but convincing." "Subtle?" I scoffed. "You want me to drape myself all over you like a lovesick puppy. That's not subtle, that's bordering on harassment." He grinned. "Just playing the part, darling, just playing the part." We practiced holding hands, exchanging loving glances, the occasional and highly awkward hug. It felt strange, surreal, and strangely exciting, especially when Nicholas would lean in, his breath warm against my ear, whispering some witty remark that made me laugh. But amidst the amusement, the excitement, the undeniable chemistry that was starting to crackle between us, there was a nagging feeling. Jason, the thought of seeing him, of facing him, of reliving the pain of the breakup, was still there, lurking in the back of my mind. I tried to push it away, to focus on the game, on the charade, on the sweet, sweet revenge I was planning to inflict. But it was hard. Seeing him again, seeing Chloe, it was going to be a test of my newfound confidence, a test of my resolve, a test of whether I could actually pull this off without having a complete emotional meltdown. The rehearsal dinner, the pre-wedding appetizer, the awkward mingling, the general air of forced celebration. Except this time, the forced part wasn't just on my end. Walking in with Nicholas on my arm was a moment that shifted the entire dynamic of the room. Suddenly, I wasn't just Emma, the dumped bridesmaid. I was Emma, the woman engaged to Nicholas Hawthorne, billionaire, CEO, ridiculously handsome. The whispers started immediately. "Did you see her?" I heard someone murmur. "That dress, it must have cost a fortune." "And that ring," another voice whispered. "That's gotta be. Let's just say it's not from a vending machine." The pitying glances were gone, replaced by envy, speculation, a healthy dose of, let's call it, what the heck happened. Looks, Brenda, my coworker, approached, her eyes wide. "Emma, this is wow. He's even more handsome in person." "He's also a pretty good liar," I replied, winking. She laughed. "Seriously, though, how did this happen?" "Long story," I said, keeping the details vague. "But let's just say things change." Jason and Chloe, predictably, were not amused. Chloe's smile was strained. Her eyes narrowed. Jason, on the other hand, looked unsure. He kept glancing at me, a flicker of regret, or maybe just confusion. Hard to tell. Nicholas, ever the charming fiancé, played his part to perfection. He was attentive, affectionate, and utterly believable. He introduced me to his closest friends, who were all naturally, ridiculously successful and equally charming. He made sure I was never left alone, never felt awkward, never felt small. "You look beautiful, Emma," he whispered in my ear, his breath warm against my skin. "Thanks," I replied, my heart doing a little flutter kick. You're pretty good at this, you know. Practice makes perfect, he said, his eyes gleaming. As the evening progressed, I could feel the shift. I wasn't the victim anymore, the one to be pitied. I was the woman who'd landed the catch of the century, or at least they thought I had. The irony wasn't lost on me. The whole thing was a charade, a game, a, a carefully orchestrated power move. But it was working. And as I watched Jason and Chloe's unease grow, as I felt the whispers of envy and speculation swirling around me, I couldn't help but feel a surge of rather delicious sense of satisfaction. The wedding ceremony. A pastel-colored blur of dresses, forced smiles, and the saccharine sounds of a string quartet. I stood at the altar, a bridesmaid in a dress that, while not hideous, was definitely memorable. Chloe, the bride, radiated practiced joy. Jason, the groom, looked like he was having second thoughts. Nicholas stood beside me, his hand lightly on my back. He caught my eye, winked, and whispered, "Ready for Act 2? "Just trying not to trip on this dress," I whispered back. The ceremony was a ceremony. Vows, rings, the whole shebang. The reception, however, was where the real show began. Nicholas was in his element, charming Chloe's parents, making small talk with Jason's relatives, radiating effortless sophistication. He was the perfect fiancé. Except he wasn't. It was an act, a damn good one. He kept me close, his hand finding mine, his eyes meeting mine across the room. He introduced me to his closest friends, all ridiculously successful and equally charming. He made sure I wasn't alone, wasn't awkward, wasn't small. "You look beautiful, Emma," he murmured, his breath warm against my ear. "Thanks," I replied, my heart doing a little flip. "You're good at this." "Practice makes perfect," he said, his eyes gleaming. Then, the dancing. The first dance, the obligatory slow song. Nicholas, however, had other plans. He leaned in. "Shall we?" Before I could protest, he'd whisked me onto the dance floor. He held me close, his hand on my waist, and we danced. Slow, intimate, surprisingly natural. He moved with grace and confidence, making me feel like I was floating. As we danced, I felt Jason's eyes on me. He watched, his expression unreadable. Chloe, on the other hand, looked less than thrilled. Nicholas, sensing the attention, whispered, "Having fun?" "More than I should be," I admitted, smiling. He chuckled. "That's the point, Emma. Enjoy the show." And I did. I let go of the awkwardness, the self-consciousness, the lingering pain. I focused on Nicholas, on how he made me feel, seen, valued, desired. He made me laugh. He made me feel beautiful. He made me feel like I mattered. Somewhere between the stolen glances, the whispered jokes, and the undeniable chemistry, the line between fake and real blurred. It wasn't just an act anymore. It was something else, something more, something like possibility. The cake, a towering confection of buttercream and fondant, a monument to wedding excess. Chloe, naturally, insisted on cutting it with a ceremonial silver knife, a performance that dragged on longer than the ceremony itself. Jason, looking bored, mumbled something about sugar and discreetly snagged a handful of frosting when no one was looking. Charming. Nicholas, ever the observant fiancé, leaned in. "Ready for another performance?" he murmured, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Before I could reply, he'd taken my hand and led me away from the cake-cutting spectacle. "I believe," he announced to the nearby crowd, "my beautiful fiancé deserves a proper dance." And with that, he pulled me onto the dance floor. The music shifted, and we were off. He twirled me, dipped me, made me laugh until my sides hurt. He was a surprisingly good dancer, and even more surprisingly, he made me feel like I was too. Like I wasn't just some awkward bridesmaid, but a woman who knew how to have fun. As we danced, I caught Jason's eye. He was watching us, his expression a mix of confusion and something that looked suspiciously like regret. Chloe, on the other hand, was busy accepting congratulations, her smile a little too bright, a little too forced. Nicholas, noticing my gaze, leaned in. "Don't worry about them," he whispered. "They're not important. Tonight is about you." And he meant it. He made sure I was the center of attention, not showily, but genuinely. He made me feel special, like I was the only woman in the room. After the dance, we returned to the cake, now being sliced and distributed. Nicholas, ever the gentleman, procured a slice for me with a generous dollop of frosting. "Here you go," he said, holding the plate out. "The best part." He even fed me a bite, a gesture both playful and surprisingly intimate. It was small, simple, but it made me feel cherished. Then came the toasts. Chloe's father gave a long, rambling speech about marriage and family, which was ironic, considering never mind. Jason's best man followed with embarrassing anecdotes that made me cringe. Nicholas, however, delivered a toast both witty and heartfelt. He spoke about me, my intelligence, my strength, my unique sense of humor. He made me sound amazing, and he did it without making Jason and Chloe look bad. He didn't need to. His toast, his presence, his genuine affection spoke volumes. As he raised his glass, his eyes meeting mine, I felt warmth spread through me. Not just champagne, it was the feeling of being seen, of being valued, of being appreciated for who I was. And as I looked at Nicholas, at the affection in his eyes, at the undeniable connection between us, I realized something. This wasn't just a game anymore. It was something more. Something real, something like hope. The wedding reception was winding down. The music softened, the crowd thinned, a general air of post-celebration exhaustion settled over the room. Chloe and Jason, finally free of their hosting duties, looked married, tired, slightly bewildered. Nicholas and I found a quiet corner, sipping champagne and watching the remaining guests. The charade was almost over. The fake engagement was nearing its end, but something had shifted. Subtly, almost imperceptibly, the line between fake and real had blurred. It was in the stolen moments, the brief brush of his hand against mine, the lingering touch on my arm, the way he looked at me, his eyes holding a warmth that felt genuine, not just part of the act. It was in the whispered conversations, the jokes only we understood, the shared glances, the way he made me laugh, genuinely laugh. He saw me, the real me. Not just the woman playing a part. It was in the quiet moments of connection, the comfortable silence, the unspoken understanding. He was no longer just my boss, no longer just the man playing a role. He was someone I was starting to care about, really care about. We found ourselves alone, standing by a window overlooking the city lights. The music drifted from the ballroom, soft and romantic. "Thank you," I said, turning to him, "for everything." "My pleasure," he replied, his gaze intense. "You were a brilliant fiancé." "And you," I said, smiling, "were a surprisingly good liar." He chuckled. "Practice makes perfect." We stood there, the silence comfortable, the air charged with unspoken feelings. He reached out, gently brushing a stray hair from my face. It was a small gesture, but it sent a shiver down my spine. "Emma," he murmured, his voice low. And then Chloe appeared, her smile strained. "There you are. We're about to do the bouquet toss. You're up next." The moment was broken. The spell shattered. We were back to reality, back to the charade. But the feeling lingered, the awareness that something had changed, that the fake engagement had sparked something real. The wedding ended. Guests dispersed, the venue emptied, the celebration's remnants fading. Chloe and Jason, officially married, departed. I watched them go, a strange mix of emotions, swirling within me. Relief, definitely. A touch of satisfaction, perhaps, but also a lingering emptiness. Nicholas stood beside me, his expression unreadable. The charade was over. We were no longer Emma and Nicholas, the envied couple. We were Emma and Nicholas, boss and employee. Except things were different. The line had blurred, the boundaries shifted, the unspoken question hanging in the air. What now? The awkwardness was palpable. We stood there, two people who had shared an intimate experience, a charade that had become more real than anticipated. The silence stretched. "So," I said, a little too brightly, "that was something?" "Indeed," he replied, his gaze steady. "You played your part well." "As did you," I said, smiling slightly. We stood there, the silence growing heavier, the unspoken question looming. He shifted, his expression a mix of uncertainty and something else. "Hope." "Emma," he began, his voice low. He hesitated, then stopped. Brenda, my coworker, appeared grinning. "Emma!" Nicholas, you two were amazing. Jason's face priceless. We laughed, the tension broken, but the unspoken question remained, hanging in the air. As Nicholas and I parted ways, a simple handshake masking the lingering warmth of his touch, I wondered, was this the end? Or the beginning? It was a Tuesday, a perfectly ordinary Tuesday, except for the fact that my boss, the CEO of the company, the man who had played my fake fiancé at my ex's wedding just a few days prior, was asking me out. On a real date. Emma, Nicholas said, leaning against my desk with that casual confidence that somehow never failed to make my heart skip a beat, I was wondering, would you be interested in dinner? With me? Tonight? Surprise. That was my first reaction, utter, unadulterated surprise. My brain, still slightly scrambled from the weekend's events, struggled to process the information. Was this a joke? A continuation of the charade? Or was he serious? Dinner? I echoed, my voice a little too high-pitched. With you? Yes, he said, a hint of amusement in his eyes. Unless you have other plans. No, I have no plans, I stammered, my cheeks flushing. But why? Because, he said, his gaze steady, I enjoyed your company at the wedding, and I'd like to get to know you better, outside of our current roles. Hesitation. That was my second reaction. A wave of uncertainty washed over me. Was this a good idea? Dating my boss, the CEO? The man who could fire me with a snap of his fingers? It seemed risky, complicated, potentially disastrous. But then I looked at him, really looked at him, the genuine warmth in his eyes, the hint of vulnerability in his expression, the undeniable attraction that I could no longer ignore. And something inside me shifted. The hesitation gave way to curiosity, excitement, a flicker of, let's call it, hope. Okay, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Dinner, tonight. He smiled, a genuine smile that lit up his entire face. Excellent. I'll pick you up at 7. The date wasn't what I expected. No fancy restaurant, no stuffy atmosphere, no pretense. He took me to a small Italian place, the kind with checkered tablecloths and candles in wine bottles. We talked, really talked. Not about work, not about the wedding, not about anything superficial. We talked about our dreams, our fears, our hopes for the future. He listened, really listened, with an intensity that made me feel seen, understood, valued. He didn't interrupt. He didn't judge. He didn't try to impress me. He was just himself. And that, I realized, was incredibly impressive. We laughed, a lot. He had a dry wit, a subtle sense of humor that caught me off guard. He made me laugh until my sides hurt, until tears streamed down my face. He made me forget about the wedding, about Jason, about all the things that had been weighing me down. He challenged me, he asked questions, he probed. He made me think about myself, about my life, about what I really wanted. He saw potential in me, a strength that I hadn't realized I possessed. He made me want to be better, to do better, to reach for something more. As the evening progressed, the connection between us deepened. The initial awkwardness faded, replaced by a comfortable familiarity. The line between boss and employee, between fake fiancé and something more, blurred even further. By the end of the night, as he walked me to my door, the question was no longer, what now? It was, when can I see you again? He leaned in, his eyes searching mine. Emma, he murmured, his voice low. I had a wonderful time. Me too, I whispered, my heart pounding. He hesitated, then gently brushed a stray strand of hair from my face. Can I see you again? I smiled, a genuine smile that reached my eyes. Yes, I said, my voice barely audible. Yes, I'd like that. And as he leaned in, his lips brushing against mine in a soft, tentative kiss, I knew. This was real. This was the start of something new, something exciting, something that felt a lot like possibility. The date was the beginning. A catalyst, a spark that ignited something between us, something that had been simmering beneath the surface, masked by the charade, the roles, the general awkwardness of the situation. After that night, things shifted. Subtly at first, then with increasing momentum. We saw each other again and again. Dinners turned into late-night conversations, shared laughter echoing through quiet restaurants. Casual lunches became stolen moments in his office, whispered jokes and shared glances that made my heart do a little flip. We talked about everything and nothing. Our dreams, our fears, our families, our pasts. He listened, really listened, with a genuine interest that I'd never experienced before. He saw me, the real me, not just the woman playing a part. He challenged me. He pushed me to be better, to dream bigger, to believe in myself. He saw potential in me, a strength I hadn't recognized. He made me feel capable, confident, like I could conquer the world, or at least my corner of it. And he made me laugh. God, how he made me laugh. His dry wit, his subtle humor, his ability to find the absurdity in even the most mundane situations was intoxicating. He made me forget about the pain, the hurt, the baggage I'd been carrying around for so long. The relationship progressed naturally, organically. There were no grand gestures, no dramatic declarations, no cheesy rom-com tropes. It was just us, two people connecting, two people falling for each other. Honestly, truly, deeply. The line between fake and real had completely vanished. The fake engagement was a distant memory, a funny anecdote, and a reminder of how far we'd come. This was real. This was something special. One evening we were at his apartment, a quiet night in, just the two of us. We'd ordered takeout. We were sprawled on the couch, laughing at some ridiculous movie. It was comfortable, easy, natural. It was perfect. And then he got up. He walked over to the fireplace where a small box sat on the mantelpiece. He picked it up, turned to me, and my heart started pounding. He knelt down, his eyes meeting mine, his expression a mix of nervousness and something that made my breath catch. "Emma," he said, his voice low, "you've changed my life. You've shown me what it means to truly connect with someone. You make me laugh. You challenge me. You make me a better man. I love you." He opened the box. Inside, a ring. Simple, elegant, perfect. "Will you marry me?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Tears welled up in my eyes. Tears of joy. Tears of disbelief. Tears of pure, unadulterated happiness. I'd waited so long for this moment, for this feeling, for this genuine, unconditional love. "Yes," I whispered, my voice choking with emotion. "Yes, I'll marry you." He smiled, a smile that radiated pure joy. He slipped the ring on my finger, and then he kissed me, a kiss that was both tender and passionate, a kiss that sealed our fate, a kiss that promised a lifetime of happiness. We were engaged, for real this time, and it was the best feeling in the world. The invitations. Thick ivory cardstock, embossed with gold lettering. Elegant, understated, and undeniably expensive. A far cry from the cream-colored, calligraphy-laden monstrosity that had landed in my mailbox just a few months prior. A subtle reminder, perhaps, of the shift in power, the change in fortunes, the complete reversal of roles. I addressed the first one with a flourish. "Mr. and Mrs. Jason Miller." A pause, a flicker of amusement, and then a decisive stroke of the pen. The ultimate power move. The invitation to my wedding, to the wedding of Emma Carter and Nicholas Hawthorne, was on its way to the very people who had tried to diminish me, to humiliate me, to make me feel like I wasn't enough. The reactions were predictable. Brenda, my ever-reliable source of office gossip, delivered the news with a delighted squeal. "Emma, you won't believe this." Chloe apparently had a complete meltdown when she got the invitation. She called everyone she knows, ranting about how you stole Nicholas and how your wedding is tacky and over the top. Hey, I laughed. Tacky? Over the top? Coming from the woman who had a swan ice sculpture at her wedding? Brenda grinned. Exactly. It's pure jealousy, plain and simple. She can't stand the fact that you're happy, that you're successful, that you're with Nicholas. Jason's reaction was more subdued. He sent a terse email, offering congratulations and a thinly veiled apology for his past behavior. I read it, a flicker of amusement crossing my face, and then deleted it. He was irrelevant, a ghost from the past, a reminder of a life I'd left behind. The invitations weren't just about revenge, of course. They were about closure, about moving on, about showing the world and myself that I was no longer the woman who'd been dumped, the woman who'd been betrayed, the woman who'd let others define her worth. I was Emma Carter, successful, confident, and ridiculously happy. I had a career I loved, a fiancé who adored me, and a future that was brighter than I'd ever dared to dream. The invitations were a symbol of that, a declaration of independence, a celebration of self-worth, of a giant middle finger to the past. And as I mailed them out, one by one, I couldn't help but smile. The game was over. I'd won. And the prize, well, it was everything I'd ever wanted, and more, the wedding day. My wedding day, not a bridesmaid dress, not a forced smile, not a charade. This was real. This was me, Emma Carter, walking down the aisle towards the man who had stolen my heart, the man who had shown me my worth, the man who was waiting for me at the altar. The church was filled with light, with flowers, with the soft murmur of well-wishers. I walked slowly, deliberately, savoring every moment. The dress was perfect, a vision of white lace and silk that made me feel like a princess, or more accurately, like a queen. I reached the altar, my heart pounding with joy, with love, with a sense of triumph that was both exhilarating and humbling. Nicholas stood there, his eyes meeting mine, his expression a mix of love and something that made my breath catch. The ceremony was perfect, the vows were heartfelt, the rings were exchanged, and we were officially Mr. and Mrs. Nicholas Hawthorne, my real happily ever after. The reception was a blur of laughter, music, and dancing. I twirled in Nicholas's arms, feeling like I was floating. He made me feel beautiful, cherished, adored. He made me feel like I belonged. I caught sight of Chloe and Jason. They were there, of course. Chloe's smile was tight, her eyes filled with, let's just call it, unhappiness. Jason, on the other hand, looked like he was regretting some serious life choices. I didn't gloat, I didn't smirk, I didn't even acknowledge them. They were irrelevant, they were a chapter closed, a lesson learned, a reminder of how far I'd come. The day wasn't about them, it was about me. It was about Nicholas. It was about celebrating the love we'd found, the happiness we'd created, the life we were building together. Later, as the reception wound down, Nicholas and I found a quiet moment, away from the crowd. We stood on the terrace, overlooking the city lights, the music drifting softly from the ballroom. "So," he said, his voice low, "was this revenge or fate?" I smiled, leaning into him, his arm wrapping around my waist. "Maybe both," I whispered, and then I kissed him. A kiss that was full of love, of passion, of everything. Yeah, and in that moment, as I looked at the man who had made my dreams come true, the man who had shown me what it meant to be truly loved, I realized something. I hadn't just won a game, I'd won at life. I'd found happiness, not in spite of the past, but because of it. I'd grown, I'd learned. I'd become the woman I was always meant to be. And as I looked at Nicholas, as I felt the warmth of his love surrounding me, I knew this was my happily ever after, and it was perfect.